So Robert, you are the main MC here at the New Orleans conference and also the radio host for the Real Estate Guys. So talk to us about the podcast and what you bring to your listeners.
Well, that's a great question. So for many years, 20 years, we've been on the radio talking about real estate. And when we first started, we thought, well, there's not that much involved in real estate. After a couple of years, we'll be done. That was 20 years ago. And the podcast version of the show has grown to be an amazing thing. It's 191 countries that we're heard in. People all over the world come. We've had more than 30 or 40 of our listeners here who we've never met. They've been listening for 6 months or a year, and they finally showed up at a conference. And that's the thing, right? Our motto is education for effective action. It's good to learn. It's good to find out new things and meet new speakers and take in the information, but you got to do something with it for it to matter.
Right. So your whole philosophy is that you're looking at people and thinking of business strategies for them, making real estate work for them financially. What sorts of questions or comments have you heard from this conference that might be notable for our own audience?
Yeah, this is interesting because the history of the New Orleans Investment Conference, the longest running investment conference in the world, is a resource conference. So gold, silver, oil, mining stocks, things that come out of the ground, which is, to us, real estate. All things real estate. We believe in real assets rather than paper, made up, manufactured, derivative assets. We believe in things you can touch, and real estate is real for that. And yet at this conference, they've had a definite kind of focus on gold and silver and some of the other precious metals, but as well as the junior miners, the early end of the resource chain. So when we first started coming here about 6 years ago, we were basically the only real estate presence, if you will. But over time, Brian London, the director and promoter of this event, has recognized that real estate fits in a portfolio as well. And so what's great for us at this conference is that rather than just being a real estate conference where everybody's kind of has that same thinking, here investors have different risk tolerances, different timelines, different goals, resources to work with, and getting in conversations with people and drawing the parallels, right, between things like stocks and real estate and gold, and that's where it kind of gets your mind going.
Well, a question for you is, for an investor who doesn't have any real estate in their portfolio, can you sell it for us? Why real estate?
Well, real estate is arguably the single best asset there is, and here's why. There's no way to sit out the real estate market. I never have to buy a share of stock or an ounce of gold or a barrel of oil. Nothing ever requires me to do that. But it's impossible for me not to interact financially with real estate. I don't have to own real estate, but I'm going to pay rent, I'm going to go on vacation, I'm going to be in an office building or a hotel. I can't sit the market out. And because of that, it serves a basic human need. Now, a lot of the commodities and resources also help us serve basic human needs. The ways that we look at the ore and other metals like copper and zinc and things, and they've talked to uranium a lot this weekend, those serve needs too. But real estate, they're not making any more of it, and it serves a function. I don't see a technology coming that's going to eliminate the need for human beings to sleep under a roof.
Now, what are some challenges in the market that have come up this year, well, I guess in the 21st century, that you've been faced with in this part of your career?
Yeah, great question. A couple of things that are challenging in real estate. Real estate is not the thing you can buy by sitting in a crib with your diaper on and pressing an app, right? It's not that simple.
You have to go to that neighborhood. You have to look at that property.
And all real estate is local, meaning if someone says, how's the real estate market? There's no answer to that. There's no one real estate market. Is that the industrial market in Cleveland or the resort market in the Bahamas? Well, what real estate market? And so one of the challenges is, for most folks, it's a lot of money to buy a piece of real estate. A good performing piece of real estate could be $50,000, $100,000, $3 million. So we have to use tools like leverage, debt. Now the great thing about debt is it's other people's money and you can borrow it at a great rate, historic low rates, but it takes a little more education and it takes a different way of thinking about it. Many people get at a kind of a basic need that real estate can make sense. My mentor Jim Rohn said that kids should have a bike to ride and a bike to rent. It's the same way with houses. You should live in a house, and that's great, but maybe you have a house to rent as well and continue to acquire an asset that both appreciates in value and can create cash flow. Plus, there's the tax benefits involved and the fact that the bank will loan you the majority of the money and yet they take none of the profit.
Right. Now, in Canada alone, in Vancouver and Toronto, the housing bubble is something that we often discuss.
Oh, yes.
So in the US, obviously the housing bubble in San Francisco is also pretty key and in the news. How do you deal with housing bubbles? and basically taking care of your clients and protecting them?
Yeah, great question, Rachel. You know, any bubble market, we want to be prepared. And you always have to ask, is it overheated and why? And the fundamentals of real estate have to do with people get up every day and go to work for somebody else and take a portion of their paycheck to pay either their rent or their mortgage payment. So what we're worried about and think about is the durability and stability of that income, the tenant's income. And it's not the tenant living in the house. It's the line of tenants standing behind them, figuratively, that could be a candidate for that rental home. I want to buy real estate where there's a lot of demand. Bubble has to do with the price. So here's the thing about real estate, and I guess it's true about most investments. The only time the price of your house matters is when you're buying it or refinancing it. If I own a rental house and I paid $50,000 for it, I have a tenant in there paying me $700 a month. Whether the house goes down to $40,000 or up to $75,000, if the tenant is sitting there just making the payment, the rent payment, I'm good. My basis is set, I've got some tax benefits, and I have income coming in. So we have to be strategic about investing in real estate, and we are definitely more cautious as we see the market getting overheated. But the big fundamental in an overheated market or a bubble is it speculation or is it based on true demand? San Francisco has great employment, a lot of folks with very high incomes able to pay a lot for those houses. Same thing in Toronto, right? Big area of real estate, diverse industry, and you've got tenants at kind of all stratas. But I want to make sure that I'm investing in something where there's going to be that long-term durability, not the flavor of the month.
And so you'd be investing in Toronto?
Well, I love parts of Toronto, and when I say parts, what I typically think of is product type. Right,
Okay.
so there's residential real estate, and that people understand. They probably grew up in a house or an apartment, so you might live in a house, you might buy an apartment building, and then there's the commercial real estate, which could be retail, it could be office, it could be industrial real estate, and then development, real estate development. So in a market like that, what you have is you have an increasing capacity to pay. People are making good livings, and prices are reflective of that. And then what you look for, where are the key areas within? Toronto's too big of a market to say, well, Toronto's good. You have to look at what we call the sub-market. Which neighborhoods, which product types, and which demographics are the strong choices.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for all of that helpful information.
Awesome. Rachel, thank you for having me on the program.
Thank you.